So last week I started this little mini-series I've been talking about. The first mini-series was The Power of Allow, and now this little mini-series called The Power of Being. The Power of Being, because I think it's so important, and what this is about is it's important to recognize how we bring ourselves to life. That's the being part. How do I bring myself to life? That's so important. It's not just showing up, but how I want to show up that's important. And in order to do that, consciously to do that, so that when we end up in situations or in front of certain people, we don't get hijacked by their energy. You know how easy that is to do, right? You've done it before. I've done it before. I'll just own that. We show up. We're in this kind of mood, but we don't know who and how we really want to be. And that's what, if we do that consciously before we show up, then we have that countenance, we have that foundation to come from. And last week I talked about two foundational ideas that really are foundational because they set the stage maybe for other ways of being. And the two ideas were humility and authenticity. Humility and authenticity. And if we show up being humble, that leads right into being able to show up as our authentic selves with humility. So I think those are two basic kind of ways of being that we might consider as we consciously choose how we want to be in life. So this week I want to talk about another one. Today I want to talk about the idea of curiosity. The idea of curiosity. Now there's some things I think we are naturally curious about. Don't you agree? Things like, I thought of this example, which I think most of us are going to agree with, and that is, aren't we so curious about how somebody does magic or an illusionist? Doesn't that make us curious as all get out? We're just sitting there going, oh my gosh, how did he do that? What in the world? We lean in toward it and we're like trying to look at it, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand what it is, trying to put it in perspective. And even if we don't really understand what it is, we end up accepting it because we're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could ever understand that. But you know what? All that goes out the window. All that curiosity goes out the window when we get in front of people. When we get in front of people, especially people that are different than we are, that dress differently than we are, that come from a different culture, that come from a different side of the tracks, that might be rich or poor, that might be successful or not so successful. You know, when we get in front of those kind of people, that kind of curiosity doesn't happen. We don't have that kind of lean-in thing like, oh, let me try to understand what's going on here. Let me have a different perspective. Let me see. Let me ask some questions about that. We lose that, don't we? We lose that in front of people. We don't want to do that. Not like we do with that illusionist. Not that excitement about doing that. I don't think we do that. But curiosity, it seems completely natural in that condition. It doesn't seem natural when we come in front of people who are different than we are. Because we often come before those kind of people with judgments, don't we? We come in front of those people with judgments and fears. We come together with our own baggage, and we're not curious at all. We feel safer not being curious, I think. But curiosity is an awful powerful way to show up to life. It is a very powerful way to show up to life. When we show up curious, we are showing up with this excitement and desire, this eager desire to know, this eager desire to know, this eager desire to understand, this desire to listen deeply. If we show up in front of people to listen deeply, that's what curiosity means in front of people. It's showing up means I am willing to see in a new way, and I'm willing to put my perspective aside for a moment. And I'm willing to show up curious. When I show up curious, we can change the dynamic of the entire interaction. We can change the dynamic of the entire interaction. We open up space for connection. We open up space for connection that wouldn't possibly be there unless we were curious. And it changes everything. It takes away the defensiveness of the whole situation and opens up for possibility. That's what it does. It is a powerful way to show up. It softens the boundaries between two people to show up with curiosity. It softens it. It softens it a lot. And it creates that opening. Let me read you what Sally Cohn says in the book called The Opposite of Hate. Good book, by the way. Let me read you this. She says this. Well, she says this, a quote from Elie Wiesel. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And the opposite of hate is also not love. You don't have to love people to stop hating them. You don't even have to like them. You also don't have to concede the validity of their views. Ultimately, the opposite of hate is the beautiful and powerful reality of how we are all fundamentally linked and equal as human beings. The opposite of hate is connection. The opposite of hate is connection, and curiosity is how we get there. The curiosity is how we get to be connected to people. Do you hear that? The opposite of hate is connection, and curiosity is the vehicle of how we can get there. It's how we foster connection. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal because it's easy to separate ourselves from other people. It is easy for us to separate ourselves from other people. And separation is what allows hate to survive and thrive. That's what allows hate to survive and thrive. That's separation. Let me read from Jack Kornfield, No Time Like the Present. From the Talmud, we see the world not as it is, but as we are. When Samuel Burke, who was blind from the age of 10 months, got his sight back at age 50, he was astonished by the appearance of the crescent moon and asked what it was. He had always managed that the quarter moon would look like a quarter piece of cake, right? Instead of what it looks like. Like Samuel, we all have erroneous ideas. Sometimes we cling to them deliberately. Don't introduce me to him, said the renowned essayist Charles Lamb about a man he disliked. I want to go on hating him and I can't hate the man I know. Yeah. When your mind is closed, you lose a true connection to the other and fall into defensiveness, rigidity, fear, and conflict. That's what happens. But when we know somebody, when we have that connection, when we decide to show up as curious and create a connection, that is how we dispel hate, how we dispel that fear. Are you hearing that? We finally understand each other. We can find our common humanity in each other by softening that border, by showing up as curious. Instead of what we already know about someone, what we could possibly know. You know, this is true for people we know too, also, not just people that we run across. You know, think about, you think you know somebody and you can continually show, maybe it's a good friend of yours. Maybe it's even your partner. Maybe it's your daughter or son. You think you know exactly how they would react in any situation. You know exactly everything about them. Well, that's not showing up very curious. Are you telling me you don't have a secret? You know, you don't have one secret from anybody in your life? We all do. Not that we're keeping it a secret, but we don't show ourselves 100% to everybody all the time, do we? So why do we not show up curious even with the people we love and know? Yeah. To come into to know our fundamental humanity together. So how does this really work? You know, how do we actually do this? Well, the first thing, of course, is to leave our bag of preconceptions at the door and to show up curious. What does that look like? Well, the first thing I think that is important to understand is if we are curious, we are showing up willing to listen. Willing to listen. There is no way I'm going to find out how that illusionist does everything by talking and telling him what I think it is, right? There's no way we're going to find out about anyone else except by first listening. And then responding in ways that are open, that create openness, that create a space for connection with things like, and questions like, well, tell me more about that. I want to hear more about that. Or how did that work for you in your life? Or how did your family benefit from that? Or how do you think that would work for me? All right, asking those open questions. Asking things like, What about that is scary to you? What about that works for you? What about that gives you hope and makes you stronger? You see those kinds of questions? So you don't have to agree with the person, but if we are to show up curious, that's the way we get to know. That's where we'll find in those kinds of open-ended questions our common humanity, the things we have in common. I'm not sure I understand. Can you say that differently? Can you help me understand? Yeah? But too often we listen to people, and you know what we're doing in the meantime? We're formulating our own response. We're back here formulating what we're going to say in response to what they're saying already. And we're not present with them at all. We're not listening. We can't be prepared to ask these kinds of questions unless we listen. And then we need to have responses like this. I hear you. How many times have you just wanted to be heard? For someone just to say, I hear you. I get it. I get it. Or, I understand how you could feel that way. Like, I hear you. I'm understanding how you could feel that way. It doesn't say, I agree with what you're talking about. It says, I understand how you could feel that way. I'm sorry it's hard for you. Or, I feel sad and upset and frustrated about that too. You see, that's the way to interact from curiosity. Being curious that way allows us to connect. Allows us to be with that other person. Allows us to address hate through connection. And connection leading to compassion. That's really what it's about. Don't we need more of that? We say we do. We say we're here for love and kindness. But do we act that way? Do we act that way with curiosity? Sally Cohen mentions something else that I want to share with you, and that's this. She tells a story in this book about the Rwandan genocide. The Rwandan genocide happened in 1994. 1994. Almost all of us were alive in 1994, and we were not babies at the time. Now, some of you others, maybe not so much. What year were you born, Kim?
I was 14.
You were 14, yeah, okay. 1994, the Hutus, a native tribe of the Hutus, murdered over 1 million Tutsis. 1 million men, women, and children. Raped, pillaged towns, did some crazy, horrible things in 1994. You know, I just watched on CBS this morning, they had a special on there about the Holocaust. That happened in the 1940s, right? In the early 1940s. This is 94. Same kind of thing. Incredible pain, incredible story about a mass slaughter. But there were actually Hutus who tried to save some of the Tutsis, who were rescuers of the Tutsis. Just like the one woman they interviewed today on CBS this morning, who now works in a Holocaust museum, who's 88 years old, survived Auschwitz, and her favorite display was this two-wheeled bicycle hanging from the roof, from the ceiling in the Holocaust museum. And the interviewer said, well, why is that so important to you? Why is that so meaningful to you? And she said, you know what my childhood memory is of a French woman riding that bicycle, helping me. She is who saved my life. She is who saved my life. And just like that, there were Hutus who saved the lives of Tutsis. And here's what some of the survivors said. She said, the first reason why some people saved others is because they understood that every person is like themselves. And that if he was being hunted today, it's maybe because you could be hunted the following day, and that if he dies, you can die tomorrow. And we understood that no one has the right over another person's life. And another rescuer said, and the one who had a beastly heart didn't save the person, but the one who had a merciful heart, which understood that a human being is a human being, saved that person. That's how we saved people. That's how we saved people. You hear that? In the midst of unbearable and unspeakable horrors, people save people because they recognize their connectedness and their humanity. And in these extreme examples should show us, should be held up as a bright light in front of us, that, and we can simply be there present for somebody we disagree with. Certainly we should be able to do that. Certainly. Leo Tolstoy, a quote from him says, "Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself." Everybody thinks about changing the world, changing the way things are, making a difference, getting out there and do it. Look in the mirror. We need to look in the mirror and change ourselves. We need to show up as curious in front of every other single human being. And the first thing people want to say is, well, what if they're not curious about me? Tough. We're the ones we've been waiting for to spread connection. Connection, curiosity that goes into connection, that goes to fight hate. You want to fight hate? Be curious. Create the space for connection. You be the one to do that. You know that you are acting from the heart and soul that is God within you and nothing less. That's what we're here to do. There's no one else's to do. It's yours to do and mine to do. Curiosity, humility, authenticity, curiosity. Here we go. So let's take this into meditation. Chrissy will guide us this afternoon. Let's take a deep breath. I need one after that. I got a little excited. Let's take a deep breath and settle into this time, to settle into this space, to settle into open mind and heart. What is mine to do? What is ours to do? How I want to be in life, how I want to show up, and to make a conscious effort, a conscious decision to do exactly that.
Hello, friends. Can everybody hear me okay?
Okay.
I welcome you guys to continue to keep your eyes closed if you'd like. You can keep them open too. But the reason I'm going to invite you to keep them closed and to trust me is because today we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm actually going to take you on a guided journey, a visual, in hopes of not just relaxation, but maybe you'll receive a message. Let us begin with 3 deep breaths. In through the nose, inhale, release. Again, all the way in, filling the belly with air. And push all the way out. Last time, breathe in. You're standing on a path on the edge of a small forest. Be present feeling Mother Earth beneath you, soaking up all her minerals. I invite you to walk down this path and tune into all of the sounds around you. What do you hear? Birds calling to one another. Rabbits and squirrels playing in the leaves. The sounds of the breeze all around you. Be present with your oasis. Enjoy this space. Take in the colors, the sights, the sounds, and the sensations that are coursing through you. As you walk on, you can hear the sounds of a waterfall in the distance. Hear it growing louder as you get closer. Hear the rush of the water calling to you. As you walk on, you are met with a clearing in the path. See that clearing and see that waterfall. Take notice to all the senses. At the base of the waterfall are big boulders, perfect for sitting. I invite you to get close and take a seat. Feel the warmth of the boulder under you from the sun. The sun has heated it up all day. Feel the mist of the waterfall on your face. The birds flying all around you. What other animals are you seeing? Connect with your oasis. shapes of the clouds, the sky. Feel that connection to God, the universe, higher source energy, your ancestors. Feel that support and that connection. And know that this space lives inside of you always. This is your space, your getaway, your oasis. You belong here, you are supported here, and you are loved here. When you are ready, you can rise from your boulder, step away from the waterfall, and plant your feet back onto that path, knowing you can come back anytime. I invite you to walk on back. One foot in front of the other. Stepping over roots. Moving aside leaves. And saying goodbye to your animal friends. Coming back to this present moment. Back to this room. Back to the now. I welcome you to start to wiggle your fingers and toes and open your eyes when you're ready.